We're about to go over the Visual Basic Editor. There's lots of toolboxes, libraries, and pieces here that you're going to be introduced to. Keep in mind you might not remember it all right away, so I encourage you to come back to this video and relearn things as time goes on.
We'll start with a blank workbook. If you go up to your Developer tab, on the far left you have a Visual Basic icon. Now keep in mind you can get to this with Alt F11, the Visual Basic Editor would be launched, or you can click on this button. If you forget what the shortcut key is, you can hover over the button in the ribbon right here to see a hint as to what it is. Alright. Now what we're looking at is the editor. On the left we have the VBA Project Window. This is the name of my workbook, Book 1. Obviously that's not a great name, so let's rename our workbook. File, Save As, choose a location, and then we're going to have to pick a different file type. .xlsx is not a macro-enabled workbook. You're going to want to either choose .xlsm or .xlsb. If you forget to save as one of these file types, any code that you've written into your workbook will be stripped out and you won't have it anymore. So .xlsm is just a standard macro-enabled file type, while .xlsb is a binary workbook and it's meant to handle code the same, but it's meant to handle the data in your workbook a little bit differently. It might take longer to open or longer to save, but the actual file size in the end will be significantly smaller. I usually notice that my .xlsb files are about 30% of the size of a .xlsm file. So if you're working with large data sets, this is something that you'll want to consider later. Something else to consider is that if you have formulas in your workbook and you delete a formula reference and you get something that's called a pound ref, that is an issue in .xlsb that looks a little bit scarier at first. We'll go over that in a separate lesson, but something to consider is that if you're just getting started out, you would want to select .xlsm. Explore .xlsb later when you have time. It's what I like to use, but we'll start with .xlsm. Call this my project. Okay, now let's go back to the editor, Alt F11. Again, we have our project window on the left. Let's go ahead and resize it. What you have here is called Microsoft Excel objects. Now, objects are complex pieces of data structures that exist within the language and the application itself. They have properties, they have parameters, they can do things, things can be done to them, and they're not simple little things of memory that stick in there. Like the number 1 is a very simple data type. You know, it's an integer. While my name, Amber, it's a string. We're going to go over all those data types later, but keep in mind what you're looking at here are objects. They're complex, they're complicated, they take up lots of space, and they can do lots of things. I'm going to select this workbook, and I can see all of the properties that go into this workbook right here. This is my properties window. Then I can select sheet, and I can see all the properties that go with sheet. We're not going to do anything with these two objects right now, but just know that they're there. Here, if I right click on this workbook, I can go down to insert, and keep in mind I could have right clicked on any of the items in my project and I will get this same menu. But if I go to insert, I have 3 things that I can insert, either a user form, a module, or a class module. A user form is a box that we can program to look like any number of things. I can put a calendar into it, I can put little drop-down interactive menus, boxes to check, or any number of things. It's meant to be a very flexible space in which you can design different things. While a module is a coding window specifically. It's where I'm going to write different procedures and routines that I'm going to execute later. And a class module we're not going to go over for a while, so don't even think about that for now. Go click on module, and now I've created a just very basic coding window. Okay? And then if we go up here, we have our file menu. We can save our project. We have our edit menu. I honestly don't use this very much. Within the view menu, I do use this quite a bit because I like to I like to maximize how I use this window. Like, let's say I've got a lot of code and I want to be able to see everything. I just exited out of a lot of my menus on the left here and they're gone. But if I want to bring them back, I would go to View, and then I can say View Project Explorer, and it's back. I can go to View and then click on Properties window, and then I've got that as well. And I can resize these. I can move them over to the left or the right. They are dockable or undockable, meaning that they don't have to sit in the same spot. Just keep in mind that I can't really control what's on top. If I undock one of these menus, it's going to stay on top of my coding window. So it might not be great if you don't have multiple screens. Getting things layered too much can be complicated. Now, debugging is also one of my favorite menus. It allows me to do some pretty cool things that we're going to go over in the debugging lecture. And then we've got tools. You can see your list of macros here. If you click on this, it'll show you all the list of available macros. And then lastly, let's not go over too much. We've got our object browser, which as we start to go over the syntax, is going to give you kind of like a giant dictionary of available objects. Like we talked about objects earlier. Objects are complex things that they can do things, things can be done to them. They have properties and parameters and descriptions and settings, and they're complicated. So that's why the object browser exists. Here you have, again, the properties window can be accessed by this little quick shortcut. The Project Explorer can also be accessed by this shortcut. Design mode allows you to interact with some of the items in your sheet more safely. For example, if you want to be able to click on a button without executing it, design mode is what's going to allow you to do that. And then if we go into our module, and we write a line of code, just for the sake of showing you how this editor works. If I hit play, it will run that code. If I want to run through the code line by line, I'm going to hit F8. If I want to hit to the next line, I hit F8 one more time. And then the next line I would hit F8 again if I wanted to just go one line at a time. At this point, I could click stop and exit out of my code at any point, or I could click play and it would run to the end and it wouldn't stop. Now, if I wanted to kind of set a stopping point, imagine that I had a lot of code and I've got hundreds and hundreds of lines and I want it to stop somewhere in the middle, then I could use what's called a stop break. A stop break is placed by putting your mouse right into this margin. You're going to click, and then if we hit play, it's going to stop when it gets to that point. I can do multiple stop breaks, and then it would stop every time it got to one of those stop breaks. I can drag my line of code up by simply clicking on the cursor. I can also right-click in the margin, and I can select Set Next Statement. So that's another way to move around that's pretty cool. Now this is really handy if you've got a lot of code, because I may not want to drag this for days and days and days and days, right? If I'm 15 pages down, I'm just going to scroll to that point, right-click in the margin, and then just click Set Next Statement. And then if I want information about anything that's on my page, I would put my cursor on it, and then I'm going to click F1 on my keyboard, and this is going to activate the help topics within Microsoft Excel. You do need to be connected to the internet to get information about a help topic. So for example, here it said that false is a keyword and it has a value equal to 0. True and false is a binary data type. So that's Microsoft's attempt to explain that to you. All right, I hope that this has been an informative session. Thanks for joining.